Well, my personality is not to be woe is me. That's not
Mm,
my personality. And because I'm a chaplain doesn't mean I gotta walk around depressed all the time
right.
or oh, don't say anything, blah, blah. No, this person, I I'm connected to this person
Mm,
in their deathbed. It's a calling, it's who I am. It's
mhm,
in my DNA, it's in my blood, it's in my spirit, it's in my skin. It's in
mhm.
my brain. It's in the air I breathe. I'm a chaplain. No matter what time, no matter where I am, no matter when, I am a chaplain first.
Wow.
That's just what I do because that's what I was chosen to do. Like we have attorneys, you have lawyers, you have judges. Mine, and I laugh when
Mhm.
I say it, is a chaplain. And not only a chaplain, but a hospice chaplain. I deal with the dying
The hardest of the hardest of
consistently.
the hardest gigs.
But the essence of it is the circle of pastoral care. All those entities fall into the circle. So I'm not limited. I'm not limited. And I'm not limited as to who I provide that care
Yeah, I was about
because
to
they
ask
were
you.
so amazed at his calmness.
Really?
He has a bullet in the C1, C2 vertebrae. And they're saying, Miss Williams, just come on in and, here are the x-rays and this is what we're going to do. And they're saying, but we're celebrating because your son is lying there on this bed, bleeding like a pig, bleeding like a pig. And he's saying, I do not want my family to see this.
Wow.
I don't want my family to see me bleeding. So do not let them come in here.
Okay. Can you hear me? You have to click on connect audio at the bottom left. I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, there you go. I can hear you now.
Hello, 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 hello.
How are you doing,
I
Joyce?
I'm great. I have a question for you. Is the light too bright in the back?
No, no, this is fine. Um, and as you can see, my lighting is not that perfect either.
No, this
Uh,
is good. This is good.
yeah, and is your phone on like some sort of stand so you don't have to hold it and things like that?
Yeah, I have it right here. I
Awesome.
can do
Okay.
that. Uh, let's see. Does that take me too far away from you, or is that better?
No, no, this is perfect. As long as you're comfortable with it, I'm good.
I am comfortable. Yay.
Yay. Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things that I typically don't stress upon, Joyce. By the
Uh-huh.
way, if you want me to face you or something, my camera is kind of like there and I have you on screen there. So my general philosophy with these discussions is, hey, the core content is the actual conversation. It's the
Yes.
actual interaction and the whatever we find comfortable to sit in, app to use, phone to use, computer, headphones, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Let's use that. Then let's just enjoy the conversation and let's hope it's a good one. I have no doubt in my mind this is going to be so much. Like I said, I really mean it when I said this is a conversation of a lifetime for me.
Oh,
I really really respect the fact that you made it on my platform and we get to sit down and you're generous with your time here. This is I should be saying this at the conclusion of the conversation.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's
I
wonderful.
can't
I
contain
do.
myself. I'm just tripping over myself too much. I'm just I'm just too excited to have you on.
Also, the fact that our connection
Yeah.
just keeps going. And I think that says a lot to the journey, both of our journeys itself.
Yeah, it is pretty bizarre as to think that somebody of your stature, like you've got a doctorate in ministry, a Master of Divinity, Masters in Divinity, and all of these academic achievements, and then fellowships, and you name it. All of these thesis I don't know what the plural of thesis is, but you've done all this research work in your field, and
Yeah.
then me as some might in the Midwest call me a heathen. I'm not a religious person, you know.
You're a
And
good heathen. How is that? You're good. You're a good
thank
productive
you.
heathen.
I'm one of the good heathens.
You're one of the good heathens.
And I get to talk to, the fact that we even crossed paths through your
Yeah.
son, your dear son, who's
Yes.
passed away since, rest in peace, Daryl, I'm sure we'll get into in all sorts of different angles and so forth, which I really, I'm so interested and intrigued at the whole phenomenon uh, of what Daryl is. I call him a phenomenon because he's left an impression in my life, and it's turned and I found out he's done that in many lives he's touched.
Unbelievable. Yes.
Yeah, and anyway, so we'll get into that. Before we get started, I guess, do you have anything? Do you want to add something to the conversation? Last night my wife was kind of making the point that you know something about like let the other person talk, or let the other person talk, or whatever. and, and my general philosophy is like, look, if the two people, or whoever is having the conversation, if we're both sort of having a good time, give and take in the conversation,
Yeah.
then it's good. It's good,
It's
and
good.
and
Yeah.
everything else will take care of itself at the background.
Exactly. Exactly. And after you do this for so long, and I've spoken with so many people and in front of so many people, that you get a sense of, okay, just silence yourself and let the spirit kind of bring what needs to come out. So that's a part of us both hearing each other. you
Yeah,
know we will
yeah.
hear each other.
One of my like I guess my note the notion that I have, or at least the experience in conversations like these, is that I it takes time to build a point and articulate a point and build the full picture, so hopefully the other person gets it.
Yeah.
And you can't just be too soundbitey about it takes a while to construct what the
Mhm.
imagery is around the idea or whatever it is.
Yeah.
um Speaking of the Idea Sandbox podcast, a plug for the podcast. You look great, Joyce. I mean, can I give you a compliment? You don't look like you've aged a day since I've seen you last. About 12 years ago? No, 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 no. 2000, uh, yeah, 8 or 9 is when I saw you.
Uh-huh.
You
Uh-huh.
look amazing. I mean,
You want to
it's
know something?
yeah.
You
What
want
is
to
it?
know something?
What is it?
Because and I accept the compliment graciously, because no one believes my age. You
I bet.
know,
I bet. Yeah, yeah,
I hear it all the time. No, when I like a doctor's appointment or so, they don't believe my age.
yeah,
And so I rejoice in the fact that, look at me. I'm
yeah.
still here and healthy, okay?
Right, right. What
Yeah.
what is it? What do you have a quick recipe as to what it is that keeps you as vibrant as you are, just vital? Just, I mean, like when I was reading through your autobiography, I'm not going to kid you. I wept several times.
Oh, Rajiv.
I'm not kidding you, and it was just like, I mean, it just evoked so much emotion in me. It's like this
Yeah.
person has been through so much, you
Yeah.
know, everything from losing two sons, a
Mhm.
son going through a debilitating injury, and a very hard divorce, and all of the other things.
Yeah.
And it's easy to look at that and say you could be defeated in life.
Yeah.
Life is just kind of rendering as dealing all these hard
Mhm.
cards at
Mhm.
you. This
Mhm.
very, very hard hand is being dealing, and then here you are, just a cliche to say, you're always rising like a phoenix from the ashes, or you're never buried. You're just always there and vibrant and just beaming. And um, Yeah, is there something that you could just quickly kind of give me a
Yeah,
a
can I show
summary of
you
how it
something?
is? Yes, of
Can I
course.
show you something? Hold on one second. I want to show you something, okay?
Take your time.
All right. I'm going to move the phone with me. So I
Sure.
want to show you a part of my journey. Um, do you see those? Can you see them?
Yes.
Those are my aloe vera plants. And they bring such a healing process and um, a journey. They bring their own journey, but their journey is so powerful. They give off amazing oxygen.
Hmm.
They are an oxygen plant. They are also a succulent plant. And so, the aloe vera goes all the way back to the beginning of time, you
Mm.
know. And so the next thing I want to show you is see my lady there?
What is the okay, so it is some kind of
Okay.
a sculpture.
Yeah, it's a figurine.
Okay.
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 And that came from Ghana when I was in seminary. And she's carrying above her head the load
Okay.
of life's journey. And so this is my little corner of healing and wellness and prayer. Okay? And this on the wall here, can you see it?
Yes.
That's was given to me by a guy um in seminary who someone made from him. He was from another third world country, but someone made it for him. And he sort of asked the same question that you asked about how do you do this? Because we have to tell our stories, of course, on that journey. And so to just kind of sum that up, I always tell people I was anointed and baptized in my mother's womb.
Hmm.
And so God always said that I knew you before I even put the skin and the organs upon the shell of your body, the skeleton. I knew you before all of that. And so what you see now is what God has given me, what He knew the person He wanted me to be, because I had so much above my head, to
Hmm.
carry, and so much in my heart to feel. But the greatest, Rajiv, of what I have had that I would say carried me, my heart explodes with love. I
Mm.
have so much love in my heart. And I don't care what I go through. It's like that love just rejuvenates itself. And it's like, okay, let's get going here. We got to do this. We don't have
Mm.
time to take 1 second to do what you need to do, and let's go the next second and we're moving forward. So the core of it for me is this love that I have carried. And sometimes it becomes burdensome because everybody doesn't hear that, you know, but I hear it. My heart hears it and God hears it. And so this is a creation from God to say that this is what I need you to be able to do, and you have to be healthy, well, and strong to do it. And so I do.
Wow.
Did that make sense?
I mean, but how did you get this epiphany in your life? Like, is it an epiphany, or did you always just this is kind of like was on day one? Joyce Williams had this kind of wisdom in her body.
Yes, yes, yes. And I can remember back to 1953 as a child. So, and I can remember vivid things, but
Mm.
I was always this moving forward. I was always moving forward. And I've shared that recently that, I just need to be moving. My spirit tells me to keep moving. I'm
Mm.
busy at home. I'm writing,
Mm.
I'm reading, I'm sending out wellness to others. I'm checking on who needs to be well, and how are you doing, and just thinking of you. A friend I grew up with, I think he's about 78 years old now. But anyway, recently, the past couple of years, we've been keeping in touch. He lived on our same street where I grew up.
Mm.
So he had two brothers and a sister. But anyway, long story short, Much of his family is deceased, but I keep in touch. And when I called him just to say, I'm thinking about you, how are you doing? The floods in Texas had flooded his home,
Mm.
and mold had started to grow. And he says, I don't know what to do. I keep trying to talk to these people. I said, I tell you what, we're going to start praying. And we're going to ask for supernatural divine intervention.
Mm.
And this is what I want you to do. You just call, you humble yourself, and you say, this is what I need. And then you step out of the way and you let God take care of the rest. So a week later, his niece came over. The people called him and said, we are moving you into a brand new home.
Wow.
And then the next couple of days, once he got in, he became so ill. He went to the hospital and he just went home this past Sunday, but the mold had gotten into his lungs.
Mm.
And I said, no, we claim those lungs. These are the lungs that God gave you. We're not giving up the lungs to anything that wants to take you
Right.
away, you know? And, and so it's that piece that I do. Don't ask me where it comes from, other than that inner spirit that who God made me to be. But he's so how can I say it? He's just so elated that you just knew what I needed.
Mm.
I said, I could tell in your voice, I could tell in your spirit, you know, you just need to do this, this, and this. So it's only like one or two steps. But if the person is not open to that, it's not going to happen. They might have to go through a couple more steps of, you know, a few more knots or difficulties or challenges. And then you come back again, because I never let them go. I never let anyone go. I don't care how long I've known you, I'm still going with you on the journey. That's a part of being, I think I shared with you when I was in seminary,
Mm-hmm.
I spent time with the monks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then I go to Egypt. I've gone all over Egypt, out in the desert. And now here I am in this place in the desert. And that's where I find that spirit of renewing me to be who I am, to do what I'm called to do. And that's my calling. So a lot of people ask me, well, what is a chaplain? What does a chaplain do? And I've had a Hindu lady ask me before, um, what is your religion? What is
Mm.
your belief? And I said, well, as a chaplain, I'm ecumenical. I'm everyone's belief.
What's the word? Ecumenical?
Ecumenical, yes.
Okay.
I am all over this earth.
Mm.
So I'm not locked into one, because I never know who's going to need a chaplain. And
When you say,
certainly in,
sorry to
uh
interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you. But when you say spirit, then um, do you mean spirit in the abstract? You don't mean one specific god or one religious entity.
exactly, exactly. My spirit is open to this earth. That's how I could travel all through Egypt. That's how I could travel all through Ghana, you know. And I kind of chuckle a little bit now, Raji, because there's so much going on that people are losing their lives in so many different ways all over the earth.
Mm-hmm.
But the time of my travel was just before Daryl passed. I was up in the top of the pyramids, all the pyramids. I was everywhere.
Mm.
And in doing that, spirit was carrying me. Spirit was, and I'm going to say the spirit of God, the spirit of Allah, the spirit of Elohim, the spirit of Jehovah Jireh, the holiness
Mm-hmm.
of what God poured into my existence for me to be who I am. I don't, I don't have a limit. The prisons, the hospitals, the poor, the shelters, you know, the women's prisons, you know, the institutions where women are just have lost all thought of sense of mind. And you go behind those locked doors, and it's not, I'm not thinking about their loss of sense of, I'm thinking about them as a human being,
Right. So
as
you
a
actually go
person.
to prisons too and counsel people?
I have done that. Yeah, I
Wow.
taught reading. I've done literacy in the prison.
Wow.
And in Marysville, Ohio, there's the women's prison.
Hmm.
And so I've spent time there with the women. And I just can't think of any place I haven't been.
Right. And it's also worth noting that it's all the hard places. It's the prisons are hard. It's
Exactly.
extreme for humans. Chaplaincy is hard. You're working with people who are about to pass and things like that. And
And who do pass holding my hand.
wow, really?
Yes, who do pass holding my hand. I have one that I really remember, and it was a woman, but um, she was kind of struggling with it a little bit, the crossing. But I held her hand and I told her, I said, "Now I can go with you to the door, but I can't go through the door with you." And shortly after that, she passed. So there's a place, and for myself, Raji, there's a place that I tend to be able to go in spirit that's so holy that I know how to function. It's an automatic functioning when you're in that space.
Yeah, yeah.
I shared here the other day that when I went to Egypt, just after I come home, 6 months later, Daryl passed. Okay, so when I received word, I went to another place. The holiness of God took me to another place. And I'm still in that place.
And what is that place?
It's a safe place. It's a place of healing and wellness, protection, love, so that I can take care of what needs to be done, not only with my son, but with every son that I see that is a loss to a parent on the news, in the newspaper. I feel it. I know what they're feeling.
Hmm.
And you never come out of this place, because if you do, you collapse. There are no words to describe what the loss of a child does to you, your
Wow.
psyche, your body, your heart, someone you brought into this world. And then, as you say, they're taken out in the worst of ways.
Hmm.
They die in the worst of ways. And that's even when I was doing my residency for chaplain. My assignment was always at night in the emergency room. And of course, you get the worst of the worst at night in the emergency room, but I always get the ones that are dying. That's how I went into the hospice.
Why did they assign you to the night shift, emergency
No
shift, I
one else
guess?
wanted to do it. You
What a
know the
shock.
answer to that. No one else wanted to do it. Rajiv, no
My
one else wanted
God.
to. No,
Humanity. I mean, I just like we as humanity, we've just owe you such a debt of gratitude for people like you, Joyce. Is that I mean, I hear these things in various spheres of life where, you know, the third shift here or working with, the downtrodden and advocating for the powerless and the
yeah,
voiceless and so forth. And today I come to face to meet somebody in the flesh who does do that and who has strong convictions doing that.
yeah. It's my passion. It's a passion. When I spent all that time in the emergency room with all the difficult, patients that came in, their bodies,
Right.
even down to the I call them the angels, the helicopter that comes in to pick up a patient, take them, those
Uh-huh.
are the angels that come out of the sky. That's my passion. How do I help you?
My God.
How do I help you? And that's even to the last of crossing over. How do I help you cross over?
When you say angels, what are you referring to?
The paramedics,
Okay. Okay.
the person flying the
The
helicopter, when they land on that
the whole
site,
crew that comes
the
together.
whole crew.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that, Rajiv, is to watch the process of how delicately the body is taken care of by the
Mm,
angel.
mm, mm.
And even when the one passes to leave the building to go to the mortuary or wherever they're going, the
Mhm.
head goes first. It's given honor, just like
Okay.
veterans are given this. It's given honor.
Okay.
The feet don't go first. Your head go. You are
Right.
honored in such a way, and so I carry that with me because that's God's child.
Yeah.
God created that. That's the
Absolutely.
temple. That's the
Absolutely.
temple. Yeah, yeah.
Can I say something? This is going to be very, I don't know. In the this is the whole point of my podcast is to put ideas on the table and talk about these things openly without reservations and stuff. And so one of the things that I, kept going on in the back of my mind when you were describing all of these things, these phenomenons, these situations you've been put in, is that I completely resonate with whatever you're saying. Whatever you said till now makes 100% sense. And
Mhm.
the connected nature of our humanity, the the love we have for each other, and not just humans, but just even animals and so forth, and
Exactly.
every living being that
Yes.
lives on our planet and so forth. But all of this in my mind has the way I thought of it is just coming from a rationalistic point of view. All of the and I grew up as a Hindu person, in India, and my parents were very religious, and they
Uh-huh.
still are.
Yeah.
And then I had sort of a falling out early on when I moved out to Ohio, incidentally, in Dayton, Ohio,
Uh-huh.
where
Mhm.
not falling out, but it's just like it's one step after the other. I started moving into more the realm of kind of version of what you're describing, is that, I mean, we're just a connected body of living beings, and and not to sound too too very out there, but everything is a living being. um we're all interconnected in all of this. There is this tribalism, and all of these things are human constructs,
Exactly. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and like God, or whatever the entity would be that
Yes.
I would
Yes.
call it, has
Mhm.
already bestowed upon me this four limbs and a body and an intellect to think, and the agency to do what I want to do in my life.
Yeah.
It's incumbent upon me, if I were to respect what I've been bestowed upon, it's incumbent
Mhm.
upon me to manifest this to 100% the way it was meant to be. That would be doing it respect, all of these faculties that have
Yes.
been bestowed upon me.
Mhm.
And so, like, you, of course, you're going to have these, there's going to be I actually had a very I shouldn't use the word, but kind of like a very staunch atheist person on
Mhm.
my podcast, the previous one.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
was he was part of the Essence of the Midwest too. Doug Kohler, my previous boss, and he's a
Uh-huh.
gem of a guy. I love him to death, and we had a wonderful 3.5 hour conversation about a variety of different things. And you know I guess what I'm trying to do is that also try to bridge that gap to understand what you're saying, because to me what you're saying is that 100% I buy in, not buy in, but just I'm experiencing in a lot of ways what you're describing to me, that feeling. And I could never, but not be the, I mean, you're talking about chaplaincy, way to be around people where, can I tell you a story that's been bugging me, Joyce?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This relates to your chaplaincy a little bit. It's been bugging me. My grandma passed away in September of last year, August of last year,
Mhm.
and I was
Mhm.
very, very, very close to her.
Mhm.
She was one of the most important people in my lives.
Yes.
I'm 44 now. I think I can 42 years of my life since I could remember the first thing. She was the part of my life.
Mhm.
And my cousin passed away. Her grandson passed away,
Mm-hmm.
apparently in her presence. She also had lost a son because of heart failure and so forth. So she'd been seen tragedies in her life, but this
Mm-hmm.
particular incident broke her. She was 94 years of age,
Oh, wow.
and that broke her. From what I could tell from the video calls I did from here, from what my mom told me, and things like that.
Yeah.
For some odd reason, I didn't make it to be beside her before she passed away, and she passed away in my
Mm-hmm.
mom's arms.
Ah.
And it bothered me that I could have gone. I had the agency to go do it, and I didn't do
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think to myself, don't be too uh, harsh on yourself, because I mean, when I say, in a lot of ways, I took care of her, going to India, helping her out,
Mm-hmm.
getting her out. I mean, I was very committed uh, to taking care of her as much as I could. Being in the U.S., it's kind of hard, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just that last minute, you know, I felt that hesitation to be beside a person who was going through incredible amounts of grief. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I could not, sorry, pardon my language, fucking imagine
Mm-hmm.
the pain you have to endure, not only losing your child, but your grandchild with who's, you know, early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any kind of advice or words to say in those circumstances? Like, you know, do you have to say, like, man up, go be there for grandma? And that's the thing that bugs me, because I needed to man up and just be there. um it's incredibly hard. On some level, I see physical, like, you know, debilitating physical things that manifest on people, either
Mm-hmm.
diseases or accidents and stuff, and I just kind of wince from that. I just pull back, and I try to avoid that feeling, that feeling that the other person is going through the pain, and if I'm in the presence of that pain, I will feel it. And I don't know if it's I don't know if it's cowardice. It's just that I don't want, you know, I want to be a better man.
Yeah. I don't think it's cowardness. So let's remove the parts that would the negative words or things or thoughts that would creep into it to say, oh, you didn't do this because you're that,
Uh-huh.
whatever. Let's take it on let's go to the spiritual level. Let's
Okay.
do that. Let's go to a higher level. um One of the things I find in these past years, especially with the pandemic hitting this country so hard, and um, the commitment that we tend to, or I'll say not we, that human beings tend to have in their own personal lives, dictate as to how you function outside of that piece, your own personal life. Okay. So distance has a great deal to do with that. Um, One of the things that I have learned, and this is with the pandemic coming, that people are hesitant to walk into grief in such a way that your inner self just knows what's going to happen with that grief. It's going to take you all different directions. Everybody cannot handle that. Everybody doesn't want to handle it. And being a chaplain, you can't force people to handle it.
Mm.
I had one family, it was the father that was passing. He had about 3 or 4 adult sons and his wife. We're all in the hospital room. He is passing. The wife is talking about trying to get him to tell her what to do with all these cars they had, the house, whatever.
Hmm.
The sons are standing back listening. And he said to me, Chaplain Joyce, he says, I'm trying to pass. I don't care about the car. My wife is over here in this side of the room talking to me about cars, and I'm dying. And for some reason, it's like those words escalated through that room.
Mm.
All of a sudden, all three of those adult men, his sons, were in the bed with him. The wife was still over in the corner talking about, you need to help me decide what to do with this, and this. And of course, by now he's really fading. He passed while we were there.
Okay.
I say that to say there was no way that that wife was going to walk into that door with him. That was too much for her to bear,
Okay.
to lose her husband.
So she was sort of deflecting from the entire the big elephant in the room.
Exactly. She stayed out of the circle of loss. See, she couldn't bear it. Her heart couldn't bear
Mm.
losing her husband.
Gosh.
And they're right there in the room. Your heart could not bear traveling from the United States to India. And maybe she would have been alive when you got there. Maybe she would not have. But to
Mhm.
let her go, your grandmama, who had been so a part of your life, how do you do that? So to protect your heart, that's what I call it. We do the dance of avoidance, you know. So it wasn't that you didn't man up. You didn't know how to protect your heart. You couldn't bear that loss. And
But
as
the
long as you
but
stayed
the loss
away,
came. But the loss came anyway.
it's going to come anyway. It's
A-
going to come
And,
anyway.
and it hurt as bad as I thought it would hurt. You know.
Exactly. There you go. Maybe
Oh, it
even more
stings.
so because now you're
Yeah.
kicking yourself because you didn't go, you know. But
Yeah.
pain is pain, Raji. Pain is pain,
Yeah.
and she knows you loved her. I mean,
Yeah.
the spirit of each one of us knows our connection. We have this spiritual connection, and here the Spirit of God, Allah, has brought us back into existence to each other. I still cry for Daryl.
Mm. Yeah.
I still cry for Daryl. You know, so
Me too. Me too.
yeah.
I think about him. Be sitting. I'm in my garage, by the way, just to give you some context, and it's kind of cold. That's why I have a heated blanket on me.
Oh, okay.
I'm not trying to be unprofessional or anything. It's just
No, you're fine.
I sit here sometimes. I ponder over those things, and I just dearly miss him. Just dearly miss him. I didn't. And the other part is that as I grow older, I realize other dimensions of his personality
Uh huh.
because I'm able to appreciate that a little bit more as I've
Hmm.
in my 20s I was a different person. In my 40s,
Yeah.
of course everybody's a different person, and as I peel back the layers of my memory, it's like, oh, this is who he was, or this is what he modeled as a
Yeah.
person. And
Yeah.
that modeling is resonating with me now in my 40s. Like, I understand what he was trying to say to me at that time, which never hit me the way it is
Hmm.
hitting me today. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. The one thing about Daryl, and I've come to accept this. Daryl was given to us for a brief time because of the person that he is and was, the human being that God created. That helps me to understand why my son is not here. My son made such a contribution to life, to society, to the earth, the time that he was in that wheelchair,
Hmm.
that it is amazing. It is amazing. And Rajiv, I have to tell you, um, it connects me to my mother. My mother had such an impact on people's lives and on this earth. They were like 2 peas in a pod.
Who were
So,
2 peas in a pod?
of Daryl and my mom.
Oh, really?
Yes. The impact that my mom had on people's lives is the same impact that Daryl had. And it was
Okay.
anyone, anywhere, anytime. It
Was
did
he
not.
was he very attached to your mother?
No, because Daryl was born right after M.Div passed away. Now, Nikki, my daughter, was attached to her.
Okay.
Yeah. But Daryl was born after M.Div had passed. But Daryl had so many, well, Daryl had the qualities of my mother.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And when he was so, how would I say, in disbelief that he's in that wheelchair. But then, what's that saying about you receive the lemons, but they're not working, so you make lemonade, and it's
Mm.
fantastic. You sell it, you become billionaires, you know?
Hmm.
So Daryl took the wheelchair as his opportunity to travel this earth and impact and leave a legacy on spinal cord injuries, one vertebrae at a time, teaching children how not to be afraid of a wheelchair,
Okay.
being called by the hospital when there's a spinal cord injury coming in for Daryl to talk to the person that you can make it.
Oh, okay.
You can live through this. Look at me. I did it. Daryl became a history for the hospital, Miami Valley Hospital, and for Wright State. Because remember, they had a department at Wright State for persons with disabilities?
ODS, yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. So the director that had been there all these years, he passed away 2 weeks before Daryl. They passed in the same spirit of time.
Mm.
So Daryl has left a legacy that is, it just keeps being talked about. It just keeps going
Yeah.
on. They're waiting for, Miami Valley is waiting for me to finish my book so that they can have it there at the hospital to talk about Daryl. And not only did he impact new patients coming in, but he impacted the staff. He became a listening ear for much of the staff with trauma and, I mean, he was a legacy that appeared out of nowhere. And then when it was time for him to exit, the exit came.
I hate to interrupt you, Joyce. I think maybe the
Yes, the
light
clouds
on
have
your
come
face or
in
something
because
dimmed
I'm here
out,
by the
and
mountains.
I could.
And so the clouds come in right over, actually over my shoulder, because the mountain is to the right of me.
Yeah,
I call it Mother Mountain. Yeah, yeah.
good on you. I mean, you're the living angel, Joyce. You're the living angel.
Thank you, Raji.
Yeah, I mean, I call myself the curious nobody. I'm nobody to give you the compliment. I have no status to do that. But in my eyes, you are. I mean, we need more of you. Like when you were talking about, the grace of Allah be on you. You are basically invoking the divine to grace us all, right? And I feel like we get lost in that kind of like my home country of India right now, and I've talked about it in my previous podcast.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of communal turmoil and hatred against communities, this against that,
Hmm.
and use the wrong word. In
Yeah.
fact, it's gotten to the point where it was one time, and sorry, Dad, I'm going to give this example.
Hmm.
I was visiting India. Actually, it was in September when I was there for my grandma's thing. And there's a store where I buy peanuts. I love the roasted peanuts from this store. And I asked my dad, "Hey,
Yeah.
can you get me some of those peanuts next time you go there?" Because I had something going on or something. And then he says to me, "That peanut bag had a Muslim name on it, so I'm not going to buy it for you." And I'm thinking, really? it's gotten to this. We really we have to pull back from the brink.
Yes.
What has gotten over us? And India, of all countries, the melting pots of the melting pots of the melting pots. It's the amazing infusion
It's
of
amazing.
yeah, you read about Indian history. It's like this person came from the southeast, and that from the northwest, and then northeast, and then from the and then they conquered these people, and these people came, and they traded with them, and then they came, and it's just all this cultural fusion that happened
Uh-huh.
over a few thousand years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are the products of all of that. We didn't just drop
Yeah.
out of the sky. I
No.
mean, the fact that we have 26 official languages in India should give you some sense of what has happened in the past.
No.
And we can't forget that. That is the kernel of India. 26, that should be the punchline, and that's it.
Exactly.
Guess how much diversity we have in India. We have 26 different official languages with different scripts and
Yeah.
words and everything else. These are not dialects, these are separate languages. And
Right. I tell you, what you said just in the midst of that, what's going on? Why can't we connect with this? What where are we losing this? A real connection of humanity is really what it is,
yeah,
of our existence as human beings. The division, I call it a division of the earth, the atmosphere, the existence of what's going to be tomorrow, what's removing from yesterday, because there is a new generation of persons coming into existence that are going to grab a hold of what people are trying to get rid of. They want it. The new generation wants it. That's their existence. That's their history. That's their life. They want that. Like here, it was said on the news several weeks ago that the young people here do not want to speak Spanish. The older Mexicans are the ones who are holding on to the language. But the new ones, they want the English,
yeah,
They don't want to hold on to the old language. But yet, when they become older, they're going to want to hold on to the old language so that they can teach their children, you know? And so I say that because I've been looking at that and I'm thinking, what's going on? But it's like a division. Some are going to survive this and some are not. I am so ingrained into the geographical earth itself. Like when we speak of India, and I was sharing with my friend here, I said they had, well, first of all, on the television, if you put something on a picture on hold or a story on hold, then immediately while it's on hold, different pictures from all over the world start to come in,
yeah,
showing different. Okay, all right. And so India came on and it had the people, how the people are in the muddier water and the animals and all. And I said, oh, now that's the river that comes all the way down through, and the water way up, miles up, is as clear as crystal. But then when it gets to the poorer section, but the value of the water, it's not about that it's muddy, it's clear, it's the value of that river. That river is their spiritual. Bathe me in the muddy water, bathe me in the dirty water, wash my animals in the dirty water, wash my clothes, because the water itself is the life. And he's like, how do you? I said, because if you pull it up on the internet, you do whatever you need. But that river that's flowing through all the way down, and different stories will come on from me on TV of all these places that I have gone that I can tell the stories. People want those stories because everybody that can't travel out, like you're talking about going all the way. Everybody doesn't choose to travel out. Many
Mhm.
people are afraid to travel out. But there is a legacy in the history of this earth that God, Elohim, Allah made that makes you want to breathe it, makes you want to feel it. And I think for me, when I look out now, that's what I see. There's a new generation of human beings coming now that are seeking that. They want something that makes them feel attached to something. And I was looking the other day because with the holiday coming up, they were talking about the spring break for the kids and everything. And not only that, but they were also talking about the airlines, how all of a sudden the airlines are totally, people are ready to go. Go, go. I want to see, I want to do, I want to, I want to touch, I want to feel, I want to function.
Yeah.
They're not trying to live for the negative, what others want to take away. They want to feel, they want to be a part of something that gives them their hope, their description of hope, and their description of life, and their description of existence. And that's hard right now. That's I look at it and I think, oh Lord, what in the world is going on? How do you and Rajiv, I have to make you laugh here because I want to be out there with them. I
Hmm.
want to help them do it.
Are you referring to the
I
younger
want to.
generation who are eager to go and explore?
Yes.
Or are you referring to the wide humanity, or is it just the young folks?
No, just the wider generation of people now.
Okay.
Not the people. I call it two different people. Not the people before the pandemic. The people after the pandemic is what I call it.
Okay.
Because there's a shift. I call it a shift. There's a major shift, and things have to be in alignment. So right now things are trying to get in alignment.
What is the
The
alignment? What do
pan-
you think is the alignment? What are we aligning to?
for me, the alignment is a balance of health, wellness, strength, renewed energy, your heart. I put the heart in the circle. Your mind. Let me give you one of the mind. All right. On TV now we're seeing Bruce Willis and his family because he has frontal lobe dementia.
Okay.
One of the things is being talked about, his tooth was missing. A movie star with a tooth missing,
Hmm.
he can't have the tooth because he's subject to swallow it or
Yeah.
take it out, or dementia. We're talking about a loss of the balance. The tooth is out of the way. He can maintain his balance. His family can help him be aligned that he can function as long as he is able to function, even in the midst of dementia. I talk about dementia and Alzheimer's all the time
Really?
because it's a part of the alignment. We know that a certain part of the brain is not going to be working, but there's also the same person is still in there.
Right.
But there are things that we need to do to keep it healthy, to keep it well, to keep it safe, to keep it sacred. That's my word. To keep it sacred. It's still the temple. It's what houses him. His body is what houses him.
Yeah.
Although the mind, okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you at all. Please continue. I wanted to interject. Maybe I should just interject.
No,
uh,
go ahead.
you know, this also connects back to the anecdote you described earlier, where this person kind of invoked a sense of divinity, and this person's house in Texas was underwater, it was
Mhm.
destroyed or it was at least damaged.
Mhm.
And the advice you gave was to welcome God into your life
Mhm.
and see the wheels turning, see the. But would you also say that we as functioning human beings with agency should also be putting our best foot forward all the time and planning and executing to attain the state that we want to attain? We should also be self-empowered to do all of that, right? Like we should also use our agency in the positive direction. How do you fit? I mean, when you talk about Alzheimer's and dementia
Mhm.
and stuff, you also have the imperative as a person to take your supplements, to treat your mind right, to
Mhm.
work with
Mhm.
stress. Don't just continuously stress yourself.
Mhm.
Prioritize what's important in
Mhm.
your life, so you're not
Mhm.
you have to help your biology also.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
how do you reconcile all of that?
The one word that comes to my mind, which I think is a great example, is addictions. People with addictions to drugs, it's very hard for them to do that. And that was a part of the interview that I shared with you.
Hmm.
The person that was on there is the addiction poster child for Ohio.
Really?
His okay, his addiction was extensive, but he also went to school with my grandson. He also had stayed with me for a brief time, but there was something. I'm going to describe the something as I know that the Spirit of God put that person in front of me, and his story of the addiction, he could not have come out of that alone. To end up being a poster child for Ohio, having his own business, a family at 34 years old, without something from a higher being. And that higher being just happened to be me, the main one, and the fact that he was given something when he was born that says, I can live. But there had to be, how would I say, there had to be water, holy water. I'm going to say holy water poured on it all the
Hmm.
time, all the time. So the family of persons with addictions, that was number one. Going to the meetings, that was number two. But Rajiv, there still had to be just a spark of something else. I became the spark of something else for him because whether he was locked up for a brief time, it's like, no, I need to go through the bars to pull you on out of there. So this is what we're gonna do. So you're out now. And he's like, Grandma, if you had, he calls me Grandma, if you had never come, even the guard said, you must have somebody in a higher power on your side. He is brilliant. But the other part, you almost you got to throw the lifeline
Hmm.
to all of us. We have to have somebody to throw us a lifeline to keep reminding us that renew that heart, renew your legs, renew your you got to keep moving. You got to keep moving, and the goal is to move forward and not backward.
And by
You have to
moving,
keep
you
forward. And
mean that you you also have a responsibility of doing the things that you're supposed to do.
exactly. But will you trying to go to your grandma? You knew I need to go to grandma. Now, if Joyce had been there with you, Joyce would have pushed you on out the door.
Without
Oh,
a doubt.
exactly.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, because
And
that's what I do.
you would
You
have
know,
been in spirit with me in India if you hadn't traveled with me, that is. And it would I wish I had I don't know. There's just
that's a perfect example. But that's a good example, though, to say that we all need to have some push,
yeah.
someone to push us a little bit. And when you don't have that, it becomes difficult. That's what I'm seeing now on the news all the time. When I'm watching the news, I just be collaborating with those people. If they could only hear me, that gosh, I wish I could be back out there.
So what is it then if is it that we need
We need support systems. We
so
need people to love us.
so
We
what
need
could be
somebody
the
who cares.
right,
Mm?
right. What could be the I mean, do you have a sense of what the practical 100% I agree with you, by the way. We need more messiahs like yourself. We need people in society who are the voices of reason, who have
Mhm.
courage to speak,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, who can speak their convictions, and
yeah.
people who can speak truth to power, people.
Mhm.
And this has been sort of a recurring theme of some of the guests I've had on till today. And I described to them some of the pains and so forth I have or I see from afar in India or here in the US. And especially the folks I spoke to in India is like, and the point I made was that why isn't there somebody, the public intellectual from the public intellectual space, saying something about it, coming out and being the voice of reason and saying, okay, time out, this is what's going on, what's the big picture, let's zoom out and advocate what's makes sense for all of us and advocate what is good for society. And the response, actually, one of the she's this extremely accomplished storyteller person, and she was on in the episode number 2, Geeta Ramanujam. um, she said that it requires a lot of courage, and not a lot of public intellectuals have that kind of courage today, and it kind of like sunk my heart, like, really? So
Mhm.
then we're kind of like, we're hopeless in a way, because
Yeah.
we need people to speak without filters and speak their minds, and
Mhm.
like I use this phrase very often, tell the emperor has no clothes on, like, just tell truth, speak truth. um
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, do you have any sense of that, like how do we make it such that we have more of the voices of you? How do we amplify your voice, but people, people like yours, I mean, voices of like yours, and then help other people like yourself who's who have this kind of compassion for humanity, and also are a voice of reason, to kind of come out and cut through the cacophony, like there's so much anger and this tribalism and all of this stuff. Like, do you have any sense of that?
I think I do because I rationalize with myself and anyone else who will listen to me, even though they're trying to do something else, they'll hear me.
Yeah.
uh, I do rationalize with that, and this is where I have come to be with that. Number one, society has changed. That's why I reference the new generation of
Mm,
people. Society has changed drastically. And where I sit, what I feel my spiritual level is that there's still going to be a major change. But we have to go through um, pieces where things that are not going to be a part of that major change start to fall off. I think that's where we are now, where things are starting to fall off, that new new growth can come, new
mm,
birth can come. Because one of the things that I feel, and I truly feel this in my heart, that uh, persons are not stepping out to do what you just exactly said anymore, because they used to.
mhm,
But people are fearful of their lives.
mhm,
People. are not only fearful, but people don't want to risk losing their loved ones as well.
Right.
There's a danger that seems to be lurking. And that's why I feel like there's a major shift, okay, a balance, that things have to come back into balance for people to feel safe to go out there and speak. Like, I don't feel safe anymore to go out there and be on that platform that, um, like someone on TV, I got my new TV show, and this is exactly what I'm going to be saying, or Martin Luther King again. It's not safe. The earth is making the shift to try to be the place where we can all have a voice again. I teach my grandkids to always have a voice, but now they on their own have learned when to use that voice and when not to now, because it's not safe.
Mm.
And so what we're desiring, there's a difficulty in pulling that back in right now, but I do feel that it's going to come. I really do, because I don't think that the earth can survive without it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. With what little of a platform that I have, how many of a few hundred views I get, some of these podcasts. I
Hmm.
I decided to do this thing called this. So currently, these two projects I'm working on, one of which is called Exploring Conversations, and
Hmm.
and the spirit of that of exploring conversations is to have
Hmm.
conversations which were typically considered socially taboo in society. So the
Hmm.
first guest I
Hmm.
had was a Pakistani guy. I don't know how familiar
Hmm.
you are with India and Pakistan, with the partition and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I saw
There's,
that one. Yes.
yes, and so I felt like, like again, my parents, my mom flipped out. She's like, "Why is he doing this? This is going to be. Why are you stepping into the foray of that? And why
Yeah.
are you,
Yeah.
why you're exposing yourself to bad actors and so forth." And in my,
Hmm.
I guess my pushback to that is, or was to her, was that, or in my mind, I couldn't really push back to her, but my general philosophy with this is that
Uh-huh.
it comes down to people. First of all, we need to add love to the equation. That's
Yes.
just how it works. And the
Yes.
first step to adding love is to first talk and converse and understand each other. Like, we need to
Hmm.
understand.
Hmm.
Like I'll give you a simple example. In the conversation, I said, "Why does the Muslim community like the color dark green so much?" And it was like something that was kind of like in the Hindu community. Nobody ever mentioned it. Some people would
Yeah.
laugh at it, mock at it, whatever. And I just
Hmm.
openly, without any inhibitions, said to him in the podcast, like, "Hey, what is the reason?" And he gave me a pretty compelling reason.
Hmm.
And so,
Hmm.
anyway, to the point that the more we converse, the more we sort of understand and things make sense to us, the love grows. And it is up to the people who believe that ultimately love is going to crowd out every other
Hmm.
emotion that's out there. It has to crowd out. I don't think we're going to sit people down who are convinced that hate is the way to cut through all of this, and
Hmm.
we're going to somehow like verbally convince them. It has to be this kind of like, more of us speaking sort of a different kind of a language that has a lot of love,
Hmm.
in it. And there's honesty in it. That's one thing. That's one thing I never wanted to. In that podcast, I was very idealistic. I'm not going to ever sound like I'm trying to pander to an audience. I don't want to ever sound like I'm patronizing you. I don't want to ever sound like I never thought of this as a quirky thing about your culture, because I think it is quirky. And I want to be honest about the fact that I think it's quirky. It's not that I'm xenophobic. It's not that I'm racist. It's
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
I'm any A, B, C, D, E, F,
No.
G. It's just that if my cousin were to be doing that tomorrow, I'd just ask him straight up, or my brother or sister. It's just as,
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
universally scales. And so, anyways, I thought I'll just add that anecdote that I think it's also incumbent upon us with the internet, for example, now that we have this amazing lever that we can push. with
Mhm.
incredible amount of force. That's one of the kernels of ideas that pushed me to start this podcast
Mhm.
a year and a half ago, actually, is that, I was listening to this guy who was a very prominent Silicon Valley investor, tech guy in his 40s, and he's kind of well known. Naval Ravikant is his name. You can check him out. He's a very wise guy. I like him.
Mhm.
One of the things he mentioned was that, in today's world, the internet is the most unprecedented tool that humanity ever had. We never had this kind of lever in sitting in our pockets. Just we can just
Right.
say certain things, and it could get amplified into millions of and reach millions of voices. And I'm seeing it. I mean, there's manifestation of it. I see in India all of these YouTube channels come up that are questioning old beliefs, that are questioning
Yeah.
things that didn't make sense, and they're gaining traction, they're gaining millions of subscribers and stuff.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
gives me hope that,
Yeah.
the truth and the things that make sense will cut through eventually.
Mhm. 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 And that's the generation that I'm talking about that are
Yeah.
going to be asking these questions, because right now they're losing what they thought they had, and it's being lost in all kinds of different ways. But it's not being lost from earth. It's being
Right,
lost from where they could put their hands on it,
right,
you know?
right, right. Good
Yeah.
point. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because what God has for us, it's going to be there no matter what.
Eternally.
We
Yeah,
just have to
yeah.
keep seeking it, you know?
Right, right. We
We
know
have to
it's
keep
in our
seeking it.
hearts. It's in our hearts for sure.
Exactly. Exactly. I, Rajiv, I have a niece who has been trying for the past several years to get me to start a podcast.
Hmm.
And she would always say, Auntie, you have what people need to hear.
Absolutely.
The only reason that I have not done it is because I did not feel safe from the trolls and
Right,
the fraud and all these people who are trying to come in and destroy anything good,
right, right.
and that's the only reason I don't have a podcast, because I never felt safe enough to be out there.
Yeah.
But that came to my mind, when you approached me about this, and I thought, wow. And I said, I must remember to tell him.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I do all my writing. So I feel like, well, I can put mine into writing and put it out in a book, whatever. But this is so amazing, because there are good people out there on the internet. Everybody's not trying to destroy,
Absolutely,
within.
absolutely. I
Mhm.
mean, I could speak for myself. My personal journey and my personal experience is that it has been the internet for me that has changed my perspective drastically in my 30s about things that I
Uh,
never thought I would change my mind on. I mean, I came across
yeah.
so many individuals along the way, podcasts or writings and so forth.
Mhm.
These people have been courageous people who had the courage of their convictions, and then they came out and said, okay, this is what I want to say. And like you said, they endure the wrath. I mean, they take a beating. These people take
Mhm.
reputational damage. They have, people suing them left and right, and they still do it. Good on them. And thank you for being on my podcast, which is such an honor. And I mean, I'm just thinking in my head, like I would love if you're open for it, Joyce. Love to collaborate with you on future podcasts too, on future topics and so forth. Because I think you
Yes.
have
Yeah.
so much to offer to this world. It's you're just a
I would
treasure.
love to do it.
Thank you, thank you. What took you to what? I mean, going back to your travels through Ghana and Egypt, what took you to Africa?
um, Actually, I could say that my experience. That's okay. That's the word. My experience in seminary, because being in seminary is something that I have just always wanted to do. And with the downsizing of the Telephone Communication Corporation gave me the opportunity to do that. And so it was a continuation of my journey in ministry. And so I saw my journey for ministry as global, not just in the four walls of a church that I would be confined in, and that's where I stay, you know. And so then by going to seminary, because I had to choose the best travel for that, I ended up in Rochester, New York at Colgate Theological Seminary. And there it was a global place to be because people from all over the world came there to
Okay.
seminary. So yeah, yeah. So it wasn't just limited, you know, to the United States. It was major, and it's one of the higher considered level of education
Okay.
there in that
Like a
seminary for
higher
uh,
ranking seminaries in the world.
exactly, exactly. And and the longer I was there, I came to the point where I accepted that, wow, look what I walked into, not realizing, you know, but it was convenient from Ohio to get to Rochester. So so that was number one. And then by my exposure globally there, then there was an advertisement for a study in Ghana, and so that was the first one. So when I saw it in the education department, excuse me, I thought I'm going. I took the poster off the wall and I went to the education department director and I said I want to be on this study tour. And next thing I know, I'm traveling to Ghana, Africa.
And
And
what
so,
age were you roughly when you did this?
let's see. Okay, so I think I was like 42,
Okay.
43, somewhere in there. Yeah,
So
yeah.
so but how old were your kids at that point?
Actually, they were adults and they had
Okay.
moved out. Yeah,
Oh,
they had moved.
okay. But it also
Yeah,
takes a lot of
yeah,
courage to go to Africa though, like because there's so many negative stereotypes about and stories and stuff that get conflated with certain countries and people, club the whole African continent like as though it's one country and it's just war torn and run by military all of those things. How did
it
you like
didn't matter.
it didn't matter.
It did not matter because my journey again was so deeply rooted in spirituality
Mm,
and being a chaplain, being a nun, all of that. So there was no fear at that time.
okay.
It was like, I'm going because I need to go and learn. In pastoral care and counseling, which was my focus, it encompasses people all over the world. So I can't just sit here in the United States and say, I can do pastoral care for this group or that group or hospice for this group or whatever. It was just in my spirit that I'm going. And it was the
What
best
is
thing that I could.
sorry to interrupt you. What
Uh,
is pastoral care? Could you kind of describe what pastoral care is?
okay, so let me give you a little breakdown here.
Yeah.
Pastoral. So then you think about pastor, clergy, yeah, that part.
Hmm.
And then the care is the care of the clerical, okay, the clergy community giving out to humanity. We take care of humanity. And so, as opposed to being a pastor standing in the pulpit at a church, mine went a deeper way because now I can go into the hospital. I can do hospice as opposed to just being a church member. I can have more focus on the pastoral, the clergy piece, the spiritual piece of the care of humanity. And so with my focus came my what I was doing in my internship, that it happened to fall into hospice, caring of those dying, and also hospital. I can go into the hospital and care for the sick and those also dying. So it wasn't that I was just a clergy person and then once a week or once a month I would visit the sick, and then come
Hmm.
back to my pulpit. So mine was I call it a greater expansion of just being a pastor or a reverend or a clergy person. And so doing pastoral care gave me a broader sense of focusing in on hospice specifically, or prison ministry, or so you have the different entities that you are able to focus on, but the essence of it is the circle of pastoral care. All those entities fall into the circle, so I'm not limited, and I'm not limited as to who I provide that care
Yeah, I was about
in
to
that
ask you
capacity.
if the person is not of the Christian faith, you would still go and provide hospice care and all of that.
Exactly. 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 And I did. I had several different entities, so I wasn't limited. And by me seeing that opportunity, I thought I'm going to Africa. And by me going, I also had the experience of seeing from the war-torn country at one time before Ghana became a country that was legally, stated as, that was 1957. Um, there were so many people who were maimed, who had lost arm, or who had
Hmm.
lost a leg, or who had lost both arms, and there was an Indian culture there who had come in too, also from the war. So being in Ghana, I studied at three universities. And by doing that, it gave me also a way to see into the actual families and the culture itself, and the children. Like, we would take one pencil and break it in half so that two children could write.
Hmm.
So when I studied at the University of Kumasi, which was the main place for study, um, that gave me more in depth to the cultural aspect of it. Like, we go into the rainforest, and if if there was say a young person who had gotten in trouble, and now here you have the tribal who they come to first. If the tribal can't settle it, then the legalities outside of tribal come in.
Hmm.
But the way that they resolve a kid that's lying, you go into the rainforest and get a certain part of a tree and make some tea and have him drink it. He's going to tell you the truth in a short time. So, and so, and then when they talk about the ivory and all those different things, I mean, that exposure was great. And to go to the next part of that, the king over a certain area that we were in, he was ill, but his son stepped in. And so you have a row of elders on each side of you. You cannot go down the middle. You might not make it to the other end going down the
Mm.
middle, because at the end of the center sits the person in charge, the king or his son. Next to that person stands a woman. Usually she's an elderly woman. She has no voice unless they cannot resolve whatever the issue is, be it political or whatever. If they can't resolve it, all those elders sitting there, they will speak to her and say, "Can you resolve this for us?" So she has power just standing there,
Mhm.
and she listens. And when they figure out they can't come up with an answer, she gives them the answer. It's really interesting to watch, because all she's doing is standing there next to the king this entire time. You got maybe 12 elders, six on each side, and we're sitting back watching it.
Right.
And if you have some input, you have to go outside of that group. You're not allowed, so. And then when they sacrifice the goat, I was
Yeah.
there to watch that. So I was able to learn the in-depthness of the rituals that take place down to the funerals. They would walk for
Wow.
miles to the funeral. Okay. And so being in Ghana gave me a lot a lot of insight into being a pastoral care person. I
Mm.
give pastoral care to anybody, man, woman, child, animal, and Rajiv, the value of that person. You spoke about animals earlier. The value of that animal. He wasn't just killed as a sacrifice, he was sacredly sacrificed,
Mm.
you know? And that means a lot because there's food, there's health, there's wellness, there's
And respect and
everything that
dignity for
goes.
the animal, right? Like
Yeah,
that's something
yes.
that is bugs me all the time when I eat meat. That I mean, I used to be very anti kind of chicken when read about
Uh-huh.
how horribly they're treated and stuff, and then I've
Yeah,
lazily retracted from that. But I try to make it a point if it's grass fed or something like that. I'm missing the bigger point is that we as humans almost disregard animals as these living entities. They're just become a commoditized food thing
yeah,
for us.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And to not look at the animals as they are an integral part of our lives and society,
Exactly.
we're going to have embarrassment in about 100 years, or we already have the embarrassment now. But
Hmm.
we're just going to be extremely embarrassed, just like all the other awful human human created
Exactly.
like tragedies that we have. The fact that we didn't take care of our animals is going to come back and haunt us and our children and our grandchildren
Yeah,
and all of that.
yeah. It's such an integral part, and certainly in third world countries, they do not disrespect the animal because this is a part of their existence. They're not
not
like the
not,
United States, where
not in
you
India.
know.
Not in India.
Uh,
No,
you
I
so
mean,
bad.
no, I'm being serious. Joyce, I don't want to like. I definitely want to be honest in these conversations
Yeah.
and speak honesty when I feel like it needs to be stated that like for
Yeah.
example, I'll go to buy chicken. Uh, 10 years ago, this was when I was visiting India, and the birds are kept in this extremely confined metal cage, for example.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
the butchery is you go to this is the butchery. You go right there. The guy has got this bloodied up apron he's wearing, and you say, okay, hey, I
Uh-huh.
want this particular chicken. He comes out,
Mhm.
he will open this tiny little door, yank it by the legs, close the door, take it behind this room, and you can hear all the agony and the trauma this animal
Yeah.
is experiencing
Lord.
while the other chicken are sitting there in these extremely confined cages. And I'm thinking, this meat is tainted. This meat will be tainted. The amount of stress that these chickens are
Yeah.
feeling right now, it's unimaginable. I can't even
Mhm.
put my finger on this.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and this is not just some isolated like butchery. I'm talking, this is across the
Yeah.
nation. And this
Yeah.
is something that
Yeah.
in a little way, if I could shed some light and talk to you about it, and not I don't want to I don't want to romanticize this about it at all in the third world countries. This is one part where I mean, again, in the US too, you have the conveyor system. The chickens are taken on the conveyors, they're defeathered and all of that stuff. There's also a loss of dignity there too. um, and I get all the other side of the argument. It's human beings versus animals, it's economy, it's food and all of that. I get all of that too. I'm not downplaying any of that.
Mhm.
It's I guess what my sense is that we should probably be doubling down really hard as humanity to create lab grown meat such that
Mhm.
or at least we eliminate that part of animal suffering.
Mhm. 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 I can attest to that because I can't think of the university that it is now, but um this woman had visited the college there in Ohio. several years ago, but she's the one who created, you're talking about the conveyor belt, but it's in the Southwest, I think it is. It
Hmm.
may be Midwest, Southwest, but this conveyor for to bring down the stress level for cows
Okay.
when they prepare to go through the process for uh, their death.
Slaughter. Yeah.
Yeah, for slaughter. But she created a different um, built of a conveyor to take away the stress
Okay.
before they go through. And she's still alive. And I had a book. I can't think of her name right now, but that was a true story. And I thought, and actually, she had a disability too. She dyslexia or something to the sort. But um, she would see a picture in her mind of what she needed to do and the conglomeration of all the figures of how to create this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And she
awesome.
calls it well, going through each door, because they had several doors to go through.
Right.
So she would show in the viewing the first door, then the next door. And I thought, I've used the door. In chaplaincy, you use the configuration of the door for everything, because when you walk into a patient's room, you going into that door, you crossing the threshold, and it's
Yeah.
really no different than these animals, because you're trying to
Oh
bring down
yeah.
the level of stress.
Absolutely.
See? So as human beings, we do have a responsibility um as to how we enter the door of each one of these things. And in Ghana, um, I was able to see that, and the respect that they had. Now that we're talking about more for food, because we had stew at the table. We went out
Hmm.
to eat. We had stew, and when they bring you the bowl of stew and your other condiments, they also bring you a bowl of water, because you would eat the stew with your fingers, but you could not let the juice of the stew roll down your arm, because that's disrespectful,
Okay.
to the table. And I thought it was just amazing. It was
Hmm.
amazing to watch where there's an existence, let's say, of being conscious of the product of food and the producing of it, and
Right.
and what it is when it goes inside of us, and and so for Ghana, then I studied at the University of Agriculture and Science, where we did have the animals,
Hmm.
and so they showed us the process of how they use it there. And it was just it was a journey that went, as I speak to you about it, from the animal to the human being, from the human being to the animal, from the tribe to the culture, because there were so many different tribes, and we traveled extensively in Ghana. And so what took me there was my passion for all of this,
Hmm.
and I think that's what kind of bothers me a little bit now is I don't feel I don't have that safe space right now to go into the earth right now, because there's so much going on in the earth, and certainly the pandemic, and it's just not, it doesn't feel the same as it did when I went. I didn't give second thought to it when I went. Then I come back to seminary, and several months later I traveled to Egypt for more of an in-depth spiritual, out in the total wilderness, the middle of the desert, in this total being from Alexandria. That's the hub of spirituality for the earth. People come from all over the world to study there. And I tell you, Raji, that a thought just came to my mind. We talk about love. I thought my heart was filled with love. I fell in love with love in Alexandria.
Mm.
That is the most amazing feeling, to fall in love with love,
Yeah. But we could feel
standing.
we could feel that. Sorry to interrupt you, Joyce. And for those of us who can't travel to these places due to whatever reason it is,
Yeah, yeah.
it is possible for a human being to feel that rapturous feeling wherever he or she exists at that point of
Yeah,
time. We can
yeah.
develop that feeling where we can invoke a sense of rapture because this is just magic. We're sitting around
It was
magic.
magic. Yes, yes,
The fact that I'm sitting here somewhere in the middle of Illinois and I have a mic in front of me and I have the opportunity to talk to you, and all these atoms and electrons are making back and forth, it is rapture for me. I just feel this extreme elation thinking it's just I'm not showing it to you, but I feel that, like you talk about feeling love
yeah.
i- in in the most agriculture farmland in America. I'm feeling this, and not to downplay what you're talking about Egypt, and I totally get what you're saying, but I guess I'm making the point that it's also possible for a person to invoke that kind of elation and rapture, maybe through spiritual practice or just self-awareness or just this kind of being present at
Yes,
the moment.
exactly, exactly. And for me, I think what I'm finding for myself, the longer I am in this place of spiritualness, is that the word desert comes to me, and the desert can be anywhere that you make it your
Mhm,
desert. That there's quiet, there's peace, there's holiness that you just draw into. There's that energy of health. It's a healthy energy. It's a
mhm,
spiritual energy. It's a general. It's not general in the context of, oh, just energy. No, it's another level. You go to another level, and I think the person has to be so open
mhm.
to receiving that, and that's where that love can just flow through. Like I always call it, like sherbet ice cream. I love
Mm.
sherbet ice cream, so it's just for me it flows like that. And but I think we all have that inside of us,
Yeah,
Rajiv.
yeah, yeah, I
We
agree.
just have to tap into it.
Yeah, and I as you were saying this, like I've had these kind of moments happen over the last, I should say, I don't know, 8 or 10 years, where that mind shift happened, where you started realizing, well, people talk about sunsets in these places are beautiful and so forth, like, and I had this realization that the sunset is beautiful anywhere. It's just the
Exactly.
gift of nature is abundant everywhere, and you could go enjoy it here, there, or the other place, and they're all pretty. And
Mhm.
if you're just aware in the moment and trying to take in, and gratitude helps for sure, because it reframes
Mhm.
everything in life. Gratitude reframes everything, as though
Mhm. Yes.
the fact that you have this moment and you're perceiving life and you're experiencing life in the first person itself
Mhm.
is the ultimate gift. It's the ultimate
It.
um
Mhm.
punchline of life.
Mhm. You want to know something?
Yeah.
What you just said and what I was describing, it just came to me that when I'm helping someone at the end of their life,
Yeah.
that's what I try to give them. That's like the ultimate, that it can give them so much joy and peace that they're not so much focused on crossing over
Mm.
into that other place, but they're focused on the love that's traveling with them, you know?
And they've
And it makes
received
it
thus
so much
far.
easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and sorry, I don't mean to talk over you. I was
No,
just
that's
gonna
okay.
I was just gonna add to say that I can't even, first of all, let me just back up here. It's like I can't even imagine you as a chaplain being by the side of somebody who knows they're going to pass in a few seconds or minutes or hours or days or weeks. I
Mhm.
always, that's one thing that when I first saw a hospice in Dayton, Ohio, and somebody described to me what a hospice is, um, it just struck me. It just struck me because I don't know if I mean I'm very this is one of my failings. I should have done this background research. I don't When I was growing up, there was the concept of a hospice where somebody knows that they're going to pass and then they're going to be in this facility. I
Mhm,
I'm not sure if it was present at the time. Um,
mhm,
what you would typically hear is so and so passed away in their homes, in their bed, sleeping.
mhm,
They
mhm.
passed in their sleep, or they passed away in the
Right.
hospital, and so forth. But
Mhm,
hospice,
mhm.
could you describe exactly the mechanics of a hospice? How do you determine somebody exactly gets admitted to a hospice?
That is done by the doctors. Okay.
Okay.
So medically, that's where the medical part comes in, that um, the family has interacted with the physicians, and the physicians are able to say this person needs not needs to is ready for hospice. It's time for hospice. There's no more that we as physicians can do.
Okay.
This is and certainly if a person is terminal, they know the extension of an estimate of time, a good estimate. This is part of uh, going to Wright State and all these other places to become a physician.
Mm,
You learn I call it the destiny, the legitimacy of the journey. We're not going to live forever,
mhm.
but medically, we know the body has done and gone as far as it can. And if the person still is alive at that point, they step over into hospice. The family is advised, that we need to call hospice now. So then with hospice, it's kind of like the angels that I talk about from the helicopter to come and get someone.
Mhm.
Um, the angels come out and provide the most dearest and compassionate care of that person that you could ever imagine. You could ever imagine, because everybody can't work in hospice.
Right.
That's a
It's a
gift
hard
that
gig. It's
I
a hard
know.
gig, right? It's a very
Yeah,
hard gig.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to
I
downplay
and
that.
I
It's one of the hardest gigs ever.
Exactly, exactly. And I've done it in the emergency room. I've done it in the facilities. I've done it in the hospice care. I've done it in people's homes. I think most of mine, Raji, to be honest with you, was done in the homes. I traveled from home to home,
Mm,
and sit. I remember one time, this was before Daryl passed, and I was at Daryl's apartment there, and it had to be, was it Thanksgiving? Okay, it was Thanksgiving, and I was cooking. So the pots and pans were everywhere, food, everything. And I had been told that because I was the only chaplain in our hospice care at that time.
mm,
And I was told that I could have those couple of days off. I got a call at midday, and I had seen this family before, but that the family member had gone into that stage of preparing to cross over, getting ready, and that everybody else was either off or not available to go, but that you're the chaplain, you're the only chaplain we have, you need to go. And I said, but no, you need to go.
mm,
I had to turn off the stove, cover the food, and I thought I was traveling into another outer space. I said, but no, you need to go.
mm,
After being told a couple of times, you have to go. There's nobody else. Then it's like all of a sudden I converted from the kitchen to my mindset of being a chaplain.
mhm.
I put everything in divine order and told her, I gotta go. I gotta go. I was there till the next morning. I was there all night, the rest of that
Wow.
evening, and all night into the next morning when he finally passed. So, with that being said, there's no there's no time limit. How is that? God is the time limit. God is your breath, your body is the time limit. And only God can take that last breath with you, you know. And so being present with the family is the greatest part because they're the ones suffering. The person lying in that bed is not suffering. They're beyond suffering. Yeah, they're on a journey. They're on a journey that's the most sacred place. You're going back to the place where you came from. What more sacred, peaceful, compassionate time? You're not going back into your mother's womb. You're going into God's creation. You're going into the holiness of God. They put you in your mother's womb. So it for me, I consider it such an honor and a
Mm.
gift from God to choose me to do such a thing as this. When my boss said, "But you have to go," the nurses, everybody's doing, you're it. Then my whole mindset flipped and it's like, I'm out of the kitchen. I'm hospice now, you know? So get my things on because you only have a certain amount of time to get there. That's by law. You need to be there.
Okay.
And so I drove up and they saw me coming and it was like, I'm here until, we do what we gotta do. Yeah.
How
So,
would if there are this is going to be, I don't know. Let me ask you the question. If a person is not a believer in religious doctrines or religious ideas and kind of the poetic, not poetic, the kind of like profound language that you use, that it going back to where you came from and stuff like that. And you as a person, you are a person of faith, but you're not any one particular faith. You're talking about the larger spirit of God and all of that stuff, and which
mhm.
is even more infinitely profound. How do you reconcile that with if somebody doesn't want to use that kind of language? They feel that kind of language is misleading, or like I was mentioning to you, like I had a person who was in sort of a militant atheist and stuff, and I feel like they're leaving a lot on the table, right? Like when you're talking about death, impending death, and you're talking about somebody passing away and the family is grieving and all of that, it's incredibly soothing. These thoughts are incredibly soothing, and they make a lot of sense. Like, and pardon me and for saying this, and kind of, if you can play with me on this, if I took the word God and I replaced it with spirit, or if I just said the infinite, whatever it is, let's
Mhm.
using a different word in the language, the
Mhm.
experience is still the same. The experience can
Exactly.
still be the same
Exactly.
regardless of
And
what entities I
mhm.
invoke.
Exactly. And so where you are right there with the words, when we talk about words with the person, it's not the words
Mm,
because we don't say all of this. It's your presence.
mm,
The chaplain, the presence. You don't have to say anything
mm,
because 99 and three-fourths percent of 100 and the other one fourth, we're all still human beings.
mhm,
We know no matter what we've gone through or whatever. Because I've had an atheist. I've even had a what do you call it? Sexual predator.
Mhm.
All of the above. But in the presence of your existence, that you're dying, all I have to do is sit there. You will share. And I have no judgment. I have no opinion. I have no promise.
How did you grow that, by the way? I mean, that is, I don't want to gloss over that point, Joyce, is that
Yeah.
it's we humans are reflexively judgmental about things. That's been my personal experience as a human being, is like we're reflexively, even my mind got programmed, and maybe it was the
Mhm,
societal kind of subliminal messaging or
mhm,
brainwashing or whatever. There was this always this impulse to judge something, like you
mhm,
talk about sexual predator or an atheist.
mhm,
How do you refrain, how did you grow that in your personality to be that kind of endless spirit of acceptance? Because I mean, judgment is the sort of the other side of the spectrum
mhm,
of acceptance,
mhm,
because
mhm,
acceptance means you're not placing any labels on it, you just kind of
mhm,
being
mhm,
very, yeah, you're just
mhm.
accepting it.
I think largest answer for that would be I didn't grow it. It was
Mm,
a gift from God.
okay.
When He said, before I placed you in your mother's womb, before I put the skeletal before me and put the skin and the organs on you, it was in my DNA. It
Mm,
was in my calling. It was in my sacredness from the holiness of my existence, who created me. It was poured into, it was an anointing,
mhm,
a gift poured into me that it was automatic. It was, it was there. And then in my teaching, certainly it's acknowledged.
mhm,
It's recognized because being a chaplain is not an easy journey because you have to first reveal yourself. So when you are stripped yourself of all your inadequacies and pains and losses and grief and sorrows, you're not left there to waddle in it, but you are redressed in the essence of so I call it a sweet perfume of compassion and love is catapulted to a level that makes you a chaplain.
How is that done? What is the process? Where you said, you
The
said
pro
you have to
Go
come
ahead.
to terms with all of these sort of, so to speak, your demons, your inner
Your own
demons.
journey. Your
Yeah.
own journey. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
how does it, how does the can you walk me through that?
The process is when I talk about the internship, that's the focus of study. You're doing a practice like a doctor, a person becoming a doctor would do an internship, a medical student.
Hmm.
So we do the internship where we are on call. Actually, the year you can do a year, 2 years, etc. Where you're stationed. That's your job to now live it with the patients and
Okay.
be on call day or night. And then in the midst of that, you still have your studies and your papers to do, as you said in the theses, the writing, and you're like a side by side with the physicians. You're in there, you
Okay.
know. Um, I remember visiting a patient one time. I walked up on the ICU floor, and it was so quiet. It was the weekend. It was a Saturday, as a matter of fact. But when I walked on the floor, I told them, I'm Chaplain Joyce. I'm here to see whoever, because you always go to the desk first. And but at the same time, Rajiv, there was a code, and it came over the speaker. So a person was expiring,
Mm.
and the nurse came out. We need a chaplain. We need a chaplain. And they said, "Oh, here's a chaplain right here." So they they drug me into the room. and
Okay.
and so now I'm in the midst of, with the doctor and about 5 staff members around this bed, uh, trying to save this gentleman.
Mm.
And they had already put the call in for the other chaplain, but Rajiv, when the actual chaplain for the hospital came up, she was grieving the loss of her father that she had just buried.
Gosh.
So I say that example because I felt like I was in the palm of God's hands with the staff, with this gentleman dying. And they kept saying, we got to try and hold him here till his son is on the way till he gets here. And they said, don't leave. Let her just sit there. We need you to stay here.
Hmm.
So I felt like I was traveling. We were traveling, you know, and second by second, because they're trying to keep him here. Once his son arrived shortly after he expired.
Mm.
But the point of that is, it's so ingrained in you when you accept the call as a chaplain. When we talk about a calling, it is a calling on my life.
Mm.
Without the calling, it wouldn't be. It's a calling. It's who I am. It's
Hmm.
in my DNA. It's in my blood. It's in my spirit. It's in my skin. It's in
Hmm.
my brain. It's in the air I breathe. I'm a chaplain. No matter what time, no matter where I am, no matter when, I am a chaplain first.
Wow.
That's just what I do because that's what I was chosen to do. Like, we have attorneys, you have lawyers, you have judges. Mine, and I laugh when
Hmm.
I say it, this is a chaplain. And not only a chaplain, but a hospice chaplain. I deal with the dying
The hardest of the hardest of
consistently.
the hardest gigs.
That's why I laugh about it, because and I've had a supervisor one time. She says, you just don't take things serious. Well, my personality is not to be woe is me. That's not
Mm.
my personality. And because I'm a chaplain doesn't mean I gotta walk around depressed all the time,
Right.
or oh, don't say anything, blah, blah. No, this person, I I'm connected to this person
Mm.
in their deathbed. And I couldn't do that without the Spirit of God being present, no matter what culture, nationality, color, size, shape, creed, anything else. This is a child of God. This is a human being. This is a person who was birthed by a mother. So I don't see sexual predator. I don't see atheist. I let them give that to me if that's what they want.
Hmm.
But my presence is more important than words.
I can't even begin to imagine the kind of gratitude these people have for you, right? Like I remember a very like minor example in that sense that back in '07, you talk about comfort, people being there for you, beside you for comfort in these hard situations. It's so underappreciated in my opinion. I had to get my wisdom tooth pulled. I had two in the back that needed to be pulled. This was in back in '07.
Mhm,
And like I
mhm.
said, this is a very, very this is just me trying to, in my little way, connect to your story. Is that when they went into my they gave me all the Novocaine and everything, they got me all ready.
Mhm.
And as the dentist started going in with his pliers, I was like, I kind of was taken aback. I pulled back and I said, uh, "Doctor, are you going to, distract me or something? Say something to me so that I don't have to think about the situation, And he said, he, I guess he wasn't. I don't think he was too. I don't think he was there to do that sort of thing. He was just not. His personality was in a way that he was just there to do the
Mhm.
job, and that's it. So anyway, he goes
Yeah.
on. He said, "No, what do you want to talk about? ESPN." He just kind of made fun of me, and he yanked out the teeth, and it was just blood just gushing out of my mouth and stuff. And I was laying there. I was just kind of like not in a state of shock, but just like, man, that was like a traumatizing experience for a couple minutes. All the stuff taken out, and there was a nurse by me, and she just placed her arm on my arm and just stood there beside me. And I remember that moment very distinctly, sorry, because it just like that warmth of her hand and the fact that she sat there and held my hand was just so comforting, emotionally comforting, just calming. And I remember like looking at her and she looked back at me, and it was just that moment, and then I felt okay. It was just like, oh, that moment passed. She was there with that compassionate feeling, that arm she put on me, or the gaze, or just her presence. Just her presence was just good enough.
Mhm. Mhm. You made something come to my mind. Well, three things. The first one is I sing, so occasionally I might hum
Mm,
something or sing something, just a little bit, or I'll read a little bit or a little scripture,
mhm,
and they go off to sleep. The person goes off to sleep. Doesn't take a lot,
mm.
like you said, just the touch. And you made me think about the movie Doctor Doolittle.
I haven't watched it,
And
but I
in
I
that
know.
movie,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And so sometimes you pull it up if wait a minute, when
sure.
you're bored, don't have anything to do, right?
Yeah.
But you know, Eddie Murphy was taking care of the animals.
Mhm,
Well, there was this humongous tiger. Was it tiger? Yeah, that was sick in the zoo. So the other animals that come, they talked about it and told him about. So anyway, Dr. Doolittle got him to the office. He sneaked him in, and everything. But uh, ended up he had a blood clot. So Dr. Doolittle performed surgery on him. Well, he could talk to the animals. So the tiger was so afraid. And his wife, Dr. Doolittle, Eddie Murphy's wife, no one believed that he could talk to the animals but his father. So by watching through the window what he was doing with the tiger, they realized that the tiger was telling him where the pain was.
mm,
So they started to believe him. So then all of a sudden, the tiger's scared, that this is going to hurt. It might not work. So Dr. Doolittle, Eddie Murphy, is trying to calm him down very carefully. So the wife is looking from the animal to Dr. Doolittle. So she comes into the room where the surgery is being done. She opens the door and walks in. She walks over to the tiger. He was humongous. Remember, he's so in the paws of humongous.
mhm,
And she walks over and puts her hand on his paw.
mm.
And then she puts her other hand underneath the paw. And she's holding his paw between her two hands. And the tiger just relaxes.
Oh man, what a cool
Uh-huh.
story. Hmm.
Yeah. He just relaxes. And boom, the surgery is done.
Yeah.
In an instant, he's got the blood clot. It's done. So your presence is so amazing, the power that it has until what can you say?
Yeah, I know.
So
I know we got into some really heavy stuff there, Joyce. It's fantastic. Oh my God. Who would have thought on a Friday afternoon? Oh gosh. This is so on one side, it's elevating the whole conversation that I'm having with you. I don't even know how long we've been going for. At the same time, just profound. I'm just being, like rapture and all of that. I'm just absolutely enjoying this conversation I'm
I'm
having
happy
with
you
you. This
are.
is just, I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm happy that you are.
Thank you. This is
Yeah.
this is
And
so
and
therapeutic
well,
too. This is so therapeutic.
it's good for me too because I'll tell you, with the 2 years for the pandemic, I really cried and grieved that I could not go and be with those people who were losing their loved ones.
Yeah.
Thousands we lost, you know? I cried and I grieved that somebody just needs to be there.
Hmm.
Just needs to be there. And the same in Dayton several years ago when the addictions were, so bad, and they were putting individuals' bodies in the what do they call them? Uh the little freezers outside, from where the autopsies are done. They had the little houses and the little cabins and things out there, and that's where they put the bodies to, like, it was so many. And I cried because what about their families? That I know what it feels like to lose your child,
Yeah.
your mom, my mother. I know, Rajiv, what it feels like to lose a person, a loved one. I know, and that pains me when I can't be present for someone. And so with the pandemic, it really wore on me,
I
for a
bet.
bit there. I had to work on me that God is there though. Allah is there. Elohim is there. Jehovah Jireh is there,
Yeah.
all of the above. The sacredness. God never leaves us alone. You know, your spirit was with your grandmama. Your spirit was there. She knows who her grandson is. And for us, my family, for Daryl's talked about every day. There's not something that
Really.
doesn't go on that somebody brings up Daryl's name. Daryl is so alive with us, Raji, because we couldn't function without that. Because not Daryl. Daryl's not supposed to be gone.
Right.
When I see it on TV or even just watching some of these shows, they seem to be so intense now. I cry as well because it's so real. And they couldn't make the movies without knowing the reality of what it's like,
Yeah.
you know?
Daryl, just to add to Daryl's presence, he's quite literally in my consciousness all the time because I
Yes.
I work out 5 times in the week in the gym or at home, whatever. And
Hmm.
guess what music always plays, and I'm always thinking about him is hip hop and R&B and stuff like that. And it was him who got me into it full time. Like when there was a moment when there was a birthday party. I think you were there too. It was in Nikki's apartment, and he
Oh,
said,
okay.
"Raj, come over here." And then he made me put these CDs back in the day in 2003 and 2004. And
Uh-huh.
we recorded some few gigabytes of rap and hip hop and all of those
Uh-huh.
music on those. We burned it on those MP4 CDs or
Uh-huh.
MP3 CDs, and I converted those into CDs because I didn't have a MP3 player in my car, and
Uh-huh.
so I had this big bag of CDs in my Ford Taurus I would drive around.
Oh, wow.
And I remember one day I, I came back when we were living together, Daryl and me were living together. I came back one day humming or singing the song "How Long Will They Mourn Me,"
Oh, wow. Oh,
and,
wow.
and he's like,
Oh,
"Raj,
my goodness.
what are you singing?" I said, like, Tupac, "How Long Will They Mourn Me?" And he's
That's
chuckling.
the impact that he has had on every person.
And he
someone
just
to
chuckled
be
because
in a
he's like, "Who is this?"
wheelchair.
Yeah. He just by the fact that he introduced me to that world of music and the fact that I
Yeah.
have that wealth and the treasure of that that genre of art or music in my life
Mhm. Yes.
has manifested in so many different ways. That music comes to play in my psyche, in my emotions, in my thought processes,
Uh-huh.
in so
Uh-huh.
many different ways. It amplifies certain things, it accentuates certain things, it helps me heal on certain
Yes.
occasions.
Yes.
Um, it helps me come to terms with loose ends in my life and so forth. So
Mhm.
the fact that he opened that door for me and music, and it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, Daryl's going to be there with me for the rest, the last
For
breath
the
of my
rest of your
life.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to take a
And
quick
that was,
bathroom break. Joyce, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Just want to let you know
Mhm.
that we've been going for more than 2 hours now, and I am just giving you a time check, and I have no deadline or anything like that. And this is, please let me know when you want to stop.
Okay. Well, whenever you feel comfortable that you want to take a break and we can do some more tomorrow or whenever.
Yeah, no, I'm like I said, if you feel that way, I'm open to it. I'm feel like I'm good. I can still keep going. I just needed to take the bathroom break. That's it.
Okay.
So you were saying something about Daryl that I was towards the end of my story with that. How long will they mourn me? You were telling me that he's touched people's lives. Like, how do you have anything to add there? Like, how? I mean, there's so much he did, right? Like, you were saying something and I interrupted you. I felt like maybe I shouldn't. I should
Mhm.
have let you finish.
Oh, that's good. Um, Daryl, Daryl's personality was very quiet. Even when he was born, he
Really?
was so quiet. You would forget he was in the room in the bassinet or so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was very quiet. He's always been quiet, but when he would speak profoundly, you know?
I always thought his injury made him like that. I never realized he was always that way.
He was always that way. He
Okay.
was always that way. And that's what made everybody love him so much because he was just like this big teddy bear,
Mm-hmm.
uh, just laid back, just, uh, I tell you, he was like, um,
I laugh because I just love that side of him. It's so endearing. He was just giant teddy bear who just listened, and he was just, yeah, like you said, full of profound wisdom. And uh but then he could so easily, I feel like he could have so easily been an arrogant person, so easily.
yeah, and he was the opposite of that.
Right.
I tell you, when he was injured, I never had time to stop and take care of Joyce. I think God took care of me
Mm.
because I was just busy, you know. Um, and at the time, as a matter of fact, when he was injured, it was on his girlfriend's birthday,
Mm.
and so they had started to make plans to get married, and all
Oh
the
gosh.
above, and because they had Diamond, and so when I got the call that he had been injured, um, and I went straight to the hospital by myself, the Spirit of God was really talking to me, Rajiv, that he's alive and he's going to be okay. So it
Wow.
was like, oh, okay, so I can do this. He's alive and he's going to be okay. It didn't say he's alive and he's paralyzed from head to toe. So when I arrived at the hospital, the doctors, they grabbed me and brought me in, and they're having almost like they have had a spiritual time in church in the ER,
Mm.
because they were so amazed at his calmness.
Really?
He has a bullet in the C1 C2 vertebrae, And they're saying, Miss Williams, just come on in and, here are the x-rays and this is what we're going to do. And they're saying, but we're celebrating because your son is lying there on this bed, bleeding like a pig. And he's saying, I do not want my family to see this.
Wow.
I don't want my family to see me bleeding, so do not let them come in here. And here he is, paralyzed from his chest down. And then they're saying, but we're celebrating because we're so happy he doesn't have to have a trach.
A what?
A trach. They didn't have to put a tube in.
Oh.
None of that. They're celebrating. But he's lying on the bed, bleeding like a pig. And he's worried about his family.
Just the unshakability of his personality. That's just like, it still resonates with me today. It's just the unshakability. There's this ice cold resolve and this will to live, and just this kind of like, I don't know how to put it. Like, I don't think words would do any justice to that unshakability. I've been in the presence of that. It's just, and to hear you tell this story, it's like, yeah, it totally makes sense that he would have done something like that. God.
He did it. And that's what helped me to get through those first moments.
Oh.
And they're showing me the x-rays on the screen. This is what we're going to do, and blah, blah, blah. But they were so excited they did not have to put a tube down his throat. So the bullet had lodged in the C1, C2. It didn't go through.
Okay.
So by the bullet not going through is what kept him able to have clear in his lungs, his esophagus. So he was paralyzed from like here down, above his breast down. But the other part of that, he was only in the hospital for a couple of months. Then by me having just come from seminary, I had just gotten an apartment. So I brought him home to my apartment. But we all lived in the same vicinity. Nikki and my niece, we all were right there. And so we put the bed, my apartment was on a corner of the building. So it was larger. It was a 1-bedroom. So we put his hospital bed in the living room, which was really the dining room. So we had dining room, living room, and then the bedroom. So I brought him home because the issue was with someone with that severe of an injury, the normal process had been over the years that a person goes to a medical institution and stay there for years, And so that was never a question. It was like the social worker, the doctors, they had worked with me so well. They're like, you know what to do. So we had a board meeting and they said, well, who's going to take Daryl? Who's going to be responsible for Daryl? So I waited till no one lifted up their heads. That's a big responsibility, I said, I'll take my son home. So they said, we figured you would, Miss Williams. So I got Daryl ready. We brought Daryl home. I tell you, it was like, we figured you would, Miss Williams. We knew what nobody else going to take it on. And so we set him up in that dining room area where the den was and living room was. And that particular night, a couple of weeks after, I finished getting Daryl settled. Nikki had gone. And I went and got into bed. And then I heard him say, Mom. So I was like, okay, jump up. I go in there. He's like, I said, what's the matter? He said, my arm fell off the bed. And I was like, oh, okay. So I put the arm back in and secured it. Go back and get back in the bed. Mom. I go back, what's the matter, Daryl? He said, my arm fell off the bed again. Put it back up. Go back, get in the bed. Third time is a charm. Mom, my arm keeps falling. So I go in there and I says, Daryl, how is your arm falling off the bed? Then I was like, he was moving his arm.
Yeah. I read that in your
And
autobiography, and I was just like, wow.
And you want to know something? That was at 2:00 in the morning. I got on the phone. I woke everybody up.
Oh, yeah.
Daryl's moving. Daryl's moving. Because Daryl's major concern, to show you the compassion that he has, he says, I'll never be able to hug again. I can't move my arms, because at that time he couldn't move anything,
Right.
And I said, well, we'll see. We're just going to pray. Prayer is my answer to everything. And he said, we'll see. You got time. But that night, let me see. That was his left arm. It was his left arm move first. Mm-hmm.
So it was so it was the severed connections in his spinal cord were refusing, and he started getting motor control again, back to his upper body at least.
Well, no, he was totally paralyzed.
Okay.
The only movement he had was the arm, but he didn't have movement in his dexterity, the fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you could move like this, but you couldn't move like this. See? So he could move his arm like this, but he couldn't open his hand and blah, blah, blah. So over the time, though, it got to the point where he could take his, like the knob for the wheelchair to move this wheelchair. He could slide his finger in the wheelchair and move it like that. He could pull his thumb close to there and move it like that. But he never had the dexterity to do that.
How was his emotional self, like somebody who's lived the life that he had lived? I mean, the stories he's told me at that point of time, at least, the kind of, almost to me, it seemed like larger than life that he led in Cleveland. For somebody to then have almost everything taken away in an instant like that would be emotionally devastating, I would imagine. How did he
Anybody but Daryl.
You answered that.
So I said to him one day, Daryl, I know you want to curse God. Why don't you just go ahead and curse God for allowing this to happen to you? He says, God didn't do this to me. He said, those boys shot me.
Wow.
God didn't do this. I was speechless.
Yeah.
I said, but you're angry, and why don't you just tell him how angry you are, and get it over with. He said, I'm not angry with God. God did not do this to me. Those boys did that. They made the decision to do that. I just looked at him. So in Daryl's mind, there was Allah. He didn't let the boys take over his life, their behavior, their bad decision making. He let Allah take over his life. So what did he do? Him and Nikki got together and got on the computer, found the place in Centerville, found Right State, switched his things. He goes to Right State. I remember when we went down there because we had to go through the tunnel to make sure that was good for him. And there was a young lady that was paralyzed, and they brought her in for her class assessment in the bed. There are people with all kinds of disabilities that if you let the ugly part of what happened to you, the traumatic part of what happened to you, the overwhelming part of what happened to you take over, no, you cannot function.
Yeah.
That does not mean that your heart or your brain is not grieving, but you're not letting it control your life. He didn't let it control his life, and he stayed busy. He had Right State, he had the hospital. He was so busy. He was going to schools, he's talking to people. He had a life.
Right.
He made a life for himself and got 2 degrees in it.
Amen.
He never stopped, Raji. He never stopped.
I know. I mean, So I came to contact with him because I was working at the Office of Disability Services in '02. I was the first time, I was working with other people, other folks who had struggling with cerebral palsy and things along those lines, So I would, in fact, I worked with this one gal for 6 months where I would lift her up from bed, help her through the bathroom, getting ready and going to school, and then do the reverse at night. And that gig had ended, and then Daryl's, through a friend of ours, he said, "Hey, I'm gonna move to another job," and Daryl's, we could be a note taker to him. And I remember, I could go on and on about stories and stuff. Like he's taught me so much. Like one time, he really found this one person. You talk about living life. He absolutely lived life. Like, he would wear the crispest, most cleanest clothes with the white shoes in his wheelchair.
Lord, yes.
And it was like, you're a gangster, man. I can't hold a candle to you at all. Like, like, and we would go to the mall, we would buy these $80 FUBU sweatshirts and stuff. And it never registered with me, like, why is he spending this kind of money? And it all made sense eventually as I grew older. But there was one time where he really liked this one person. She was, I think, in business major, one of his classes. And I tell the story because I just wanted to kind of add to your story about the resilience and the unshakability, at least what I perceive of it as. So he really liked this person, and he wanted me to write a letter to her back, because we didn't know who, like, we didn't know the first thing about her. We came to know that I think I went to the department, and then he asked her, what is the person's name, blah, blah, blah. And so I wrote this, either an email. I think I wrote an email. Yes, this was 2003. So we wrote an email, and he dictated the whole thing to me. It's like, write this and write this and write this. And then he said, like, at this time of the day, we'll meet at the student union, And so I, wrote it and sent it and all that. And this time arrives where this person is supposed to, and she responded back and said, yeah, I'll meet you, whatever. She had no background of who Daryl was, just to give you some idea. Okay. Anyway, 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock, whatever the time was, I remember back in Wright State was, we show up at this place, and 1 o'clock comes by and nobody shows up. And we look and we look and we look, and 2 o'clock comes around, and we're like, okay, well, I think we know what's going on here. It was a very, very, very heartbreaking moment for me. I mean, to think that something like this had happened. We were speculating, Daryl was speculating whether she noticed that he was in the wheelchair. She just kind of left and all, whatever. But Daryl was a picture of just like unshakability yet again. It's just like, all right, man, let's just go. It's okay. I don't have to, you don't have to feel sorry for me. I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. He didn't say this to me. I'm sure that's what was going on in his mind. Like, all right, on to the next thing. And that struck me in a minute, because I was raised in India. Joyce, this is something about my Indian upbringing. I was raised in my, teens, and you talk about subliminal messaging and so forth. Like, I was raised to almost take it, as though it's a life defeat. There's something has happened. A girl rejected you. A person rejected you. There was you had a love interest, and then they shattered your heart or whatever, and you just kind of down on yourself. And then meanwhile, Daryl here was ever the picture of just this resilience and this unshakability, and he imparted that to me. He's like, be this way. He coached me in that way, and it stuck with me forever. It resonates and echoes with me over all the other disappointments in my life, not just love interests and stuff. Like, whatever disappointment it is, just the ability to pick yourself up and just keep chugging along.
Yeah, because what's meant to be will be, and what's not is not. It wasn't meant to be. He knew that. He made the effort.
Right.
But if God had wanted it to be, she would have been there. That's the human part. He knew in his heart, well, I did it. I'm doing what I need to do.
Right.
But God has protected me as well. God did not want his heart broken, so he didn't allow it to take phase. It didn't take shape, because then she would have broken his heart. But since she didn't show, she didn't do anything. She just didn't show.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I taught my children. If it's meant to be, it will be. But if it's not, and it's not good for you, so that wasn't good for him.
But you also instilled in them that you do your part with your heart in it. You do what you need to do.
You do what's right, and right will follow you all the time. So that wasn't right. So that right didn't follow him. But he poured his heart out, and that was good for him and her loss, or just not her journey.
Or it wasn't meant to be, or whatever.
Because we can't make anybody do anything. And that's, I guess, the passion and compassion that I have. That's the empathy that I have for people, that I can't make anybody do anything. And that's okay. Because if it's not part of their journey, who am I to dictate, you know? Who am I to open my mouth and have such great input? Well, they didn't do this or they didn't do that. No, they didn't. And I'm okay.
You don't resent those people afterward.
No. The resentment is only going to burn a hole in your heart. The resentment, it's not yours. It's evil. It's hateful. It's mean. It's contradictory. It's against everything that you would want.
Why is it
goes
contradictory?
Against what you were trying to. Yeah.
Why is it contradictory? To what is it contradicting?
How you really feel. And you're becoming contradictory now, because you're saying, I'm this good person and I want to do this, I want to do that. But just because the other person doesn't accept it or respond the way you want it to be, we make it contradictory. But it's really not.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think, I think too, that comes with growth, Rajiv. Growth and development, and understanding, and just acceptance too, that what's going to be in your life and meant to be, it's going to be. But when other things start to creep in, you know, in your own conscious mind, what's good. And as a matter of fact, I just said this to someone: what's good and what's bad, what's evil, what's good, what's pain and what's not pain. But sometimes we get so excited, well, let's do that. You know, like he got excited about that, but when she didn't show up, it was like, oh, put the brakes on, especially after 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes, he knew she wasn't coming. Well, we'll sit here and see. I don't have nothing else to do. Raji doesn't have anything else to do.
Oh God, the times we had. It was just the kind of like, it must have been some weird divine accident that I got to hang out with him. You know, that it's worth saying that I started, India got cable TV for the first time in the mid-90s. So until the 90s, we had one channel and it was just entirely government programming, and it was very hard, tightly controlled and all of that stuff. And then 95, the floodgates opened. We had M.Div, we had all these kind of the Western imports of entertainment and food and all of these things happen due to various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I started liking music on MTV, on hip hop, and my parents, my dad was always liked Western music, Michael Jackson to Lionel Richards to
Mm-hmm.
everything else. And so when I met Daryl, it was like the perfect, like as far as the the cultural moorings or the cultural angles and perspectives to take came from Daryl for me. He was like this elder brother that I sat alongside. I took notes for him and I emptied his pee bag and fed him and this and that. But
I
then
know, amazing, isn't it?
yeah, and then in return he was just like giving me all this wise wisdom that I had probably zero context for. I was just like, okay,
He loved you. He loved you.
really?
He loved you.
Okay, that's good
He
to know.
loved you.
Yeah.
Yeah. He not only loved you, he loved on you.
What do you mean by
Pour
that?
this love. Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by loved on me?
He poured it out on you. He was kind. He was loving. He was giving. He was just giving. He was more giving. He was more giving. He couldn't physically walk and take you to the park or whatever, but he loved on you. You know,
Yes,
he was
indeed.
sensitive. Yeah. He understood. It was like looking at him, you know, and like you just said, my brother,
Yeah.
you know, compassion and care and empathy. And look at it now. It's still loving on you.
It still echoes through my life, our lives.
Yeah. And so I will say this part to you. So if you were wondering, God, why'd you bring me and Joyce back together? Because there's Daryl. You needed Daryl. And we always writing about Daryl. I got so much stuff. I got to pull my stuff off the phone. I got to pull it from, and
Really?
poor Nikki. You would have thought Nikki gave birth to this boy. Mm-hmm. She never stops grieving.
Man.
Mm-hmm. And now with Diamond having her own son, because we talked about that, didn't we? Before, she had the baby.
Not about diamonds. I don't think so.
Okay, so I'll send you some pictures of the baby because it's a little boy. He was born on Christmas Day.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so for Diamond, this is, I call him our Daryl baby.
Mm-hmm.
So this gives her family, her fiance. Because I was telling you they plan on getting married next year. And then he
Yes.
has a son that's 8 because his mother passed away. She had a disability. And so they all went to school together, And so Diamond has taken that son on as her own,
Wow.
So now she has these 2 boys.
Mm-hmm.
And that fulfills her to some extent for Daryl. But the christening is on May. So I'm going to do the christening for them. And so I'll go to Cleveland, but I wasn't able to make the baby shower. And she said to everyone that she was so sad. The reason I wasn't able to make it because the storms were in Oklahoma and Chicago, so I couldn't get the flights through. Mm-hmm. And but she says she was so sad that I wasn't there to everybody because that would have been a piece of Daryl there. Mm-hmm. So she considers my presence as a piece of her dad. So I'll do the christening, and I want it to be amazing, And I was thinking for Scott, I was going to have a picture of Daryl and have Scott hold the picture there while we're standing. So this is important for her. And this is a part of being a chaplain. I've buried over 200 people. I've done so many funerals, and people will just give me a little touch of who their family member is or was, and I can build from that. I have the ability to build a person's life from that, and make it something that's you wouldn't forget, So I want this to be that way for her, because between her and Nikki, I don't know who grieves the most. Mm-hmm. Daryl, in other words, Daryl wasn't supposed to leave here, but God saw fit, that was his time. We all have a time, and only God knows that time. Only God.
For those of, I don't know if I gave enough context about this, but maybe I can in post editing too, is that Daryl is Joyce Williams' son, who I'm talking to, who's now passed, or since passed away in 2013, right? If I'm not mistaken, Joyce?
Hold on one second. Okay. Oh, okay. That was Nikki calling. So maybe in a few minutes we can come to a close, and I can call and make sure everything's okay.
Sure.
Now, what were you saying?
I was just trying to give context of who Daryl is, for somebody listening or watching, is that Daryl was your son, and he passed away in 2014, as I understand, 2013 or 14. Correct me if I'm
2013.
2013. Yep. And Daryl was a fully functional human being. He lived in, he was living this larger than life in Cleveland, larger than life, I should say. And there was a really horrific, tragic accident that rendered him quadriplegic. And as Joyce and me were talking, he kept chugging along, lived his life, and went on to do a wide array of things, despite the fact that he had a lot of challenges ahead of him. Like, I don't want to gloss over the fact that he would apply for these jobs and he would get declined. I remember, and he would be, I would ask him, like, hey, what happened, Daryl? And, the records that I have I don't know if you have anything to add there. There would be a lot of times where he would be the right fit for the job, but they would look at his record and then they would decline him for whatever records that he had. But he kept chugging along. He was this guy, and I'll, if you could send me some pictures, I'll insert some pictures here, or videos, or whatever that is you think is relevant here. Like I said, to me, Daryl was this unshakable personality that is a one in a lifetime, in my opinion. That I call him the ultimate gangster, the OG, the absolute, like, I mean that in the most positive way. Like, he really, he really kind of lived that kind of unshakability. Nothing could shake him. And anyway, to be sitting here with you with the privilege that I have, Joyce, it's I have so much to talk to you about. I didn't even, like, I have like 15 pages of like notes I'd written down from the autobiography.
But we'll have to do it again.
Yes, we absolutely. If you could be so kind to come on the Idea Sandbox, and it's just an absolute joy. I don't think I can use any words to describe how elated I am that I could have this conversation with you, Joyce. Thank you so much. This is an absolute honor, privilege, a blessing that you're here.
Well, let me give you one bit of closing before we end, okay, for today.
Yeah.
Daryl was brought here for a purpose, and that was to serve as God's child in a way that we don't unless a traumatic situation has taken place. It happens to all of us. His traumatic situation happened to put him in a wheelchair, where he served an ultimate state of excellence, high quality, resilience, as you speak of, compassion and love. when we're just walking around every day, we can't do that. So he was brought here to show
Yeah.
so many people from the medical community to children to college to family to friends. He gave the ultimate price as a human being of service
Hmm.
that touched lives, that is what we're doing. This is an example that he will never be forgotten. And the reality of it, he was just a good-hearted person. He was
Yes.
a kind, loving, compassionate person.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so he was able to serve as a calling. We'll say that was his calling, to do the things that he did, and in amazement, even to the medical staff, the medical community, they still talk about him,
Really.
And so that's a good place for us to be, to acknowledge that. And I think this is giving, for us, it's giving credence to the fact that the Spirit of God has brought us together to talk
Hmm.
about it.
Indeed.
And so with that,
Thank you, Joyce. You've been so generous with your time. Um, like you said, it would be an honor if we could do this again and cover all the other
yes,
topics that I wanted to cover with you.
yes. We'll just keep doing it because we have a purpose, a goal here that God has set certainly ahead of us. God always said, I know the plans I have laid for you. They are not to hurt you or to harm you, but to catapult you into a place of love and hope and service, all the above that we're talking about. So
Yeah,
God knows the plan that he has for us, Rajiv.
indeed. Amen. Thank you, Joyce. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.